one of the biggest thrills I got in the boxing book was I was writing about a big fight in Yankee Stadium, the first prize fight ever held there. And it was also at the time where radio was just introduced into sports. I don't know where it stood in baseball, but the first radio broadcast, excuse me, from ringside was in 1922, just the year that this fight took place. So I was looking up some things about the radio broadcast, and then it came to me, gee, these guys are both Jewish. Lou Tengler's Jewish, and he's fighting the champion, who happened to be Benny Leonard, and he was Jewish. And I said, they're both Jewish guys, and they're both pretty close to the immigrant generation. Maybe one of the Yiddish newspapers picked this up. Well, just at that time, there was an Israeli project of putting Jewish newspapers from Israel and the United States online. And I didn't think they were going to include any Yiddish newspapers, but I looked through the index and I found out the Morning Journal, one of the big Yiddish newspapers of the day, was online. Well, I couldn't read enough Yiddish, and I knew when the fight was, so I said, well, if they had sent a reporter, I'd surmised all this. If they sent a reporter, it would probably be the day after, a couple of days after the date of the fight. And of course, I knew the date of the fight, so I got a hold of this 3-page article. It was a very long article. And darn if I didn't find this article in the paper about the fight. And what happened, this reporter says, he says, everybody's listening on radio, they're going to the fight. I'm going to go to Hester Street, and I'm going to find out what's really going on. So he goes down, this is all in Yiddish, and he goes down to Hester Street. And everybody's out on the street. It's in summer. It took place in July of 1922. And everybody's on the street because they couldn't get in the ballpark. They couldn't afford it, really. And it was on the radio, but I don't know how many people knew about the radio. So they were standing on the street, and he records what they say. It takes up 3 pages in my book. I quoted the whole article. Well, in one part of the article, the Jews are arguing about if one of these Jews lose, then another person will take his place, and he could be Italian. So somebody else in the crowd says, the Italians, they're anti-Semitic and they don't like the Jews. So somebody else pipes up, and he writes all this down. He says, even the Pope is against the Jews. So at that point, I show it to Ruth, and Ruth says, you can't put this in the book. I said, well, it's the truth. Ruth said, you can't do it. So I was torn between of hurting people's feelings on one side and not telling the truth on the other. So I said, well, I'm not smart enough to figure this out. There's a woman who lives next door here who's sort of like a lay Catholic person. She goes into hospitals and helps people who are Catholic with prayers and helping them in any way they can. She's a wonderful woman. So I told her this whole cockamamie story. And I said, Agnes, is this the right thing to do to print it or not? She said, let me think about it. Give me something to read. So I gave her the thing to read. And she gives me back a written dissertation on what her position is. I still have it. It's in handwriting. And she says, you're not being true if you don't print what was actually said. And that's what she said. And she's a devout Catholic. So I thought, boy, if she is, and they're saying all these bad things about the Pope, I really better print this thing.